Opposition announces shadow ministerial portfolios. Government criticized over TB response in Daru.
Suspend other unnecessary activities.
And Oro FC victorious in NSL Port Moresby derby.
This is National MTV News with Meriba Tulo.
Good evening, I'm Meriba Tulo with Saturday's news. The opposition has presented its alternate policies. Opposition leader Don Pollier says the policies are inspired by the Holy Scriptures and the National Constitution. He says the opposition believes in a skills-based organization and drive to drive the country forward. Fabian Hakalit says more.
Mr. Pollier has outlined the opposition's plans and policies as an alternate government. Mr. Pollier said these policies are well researched and thought based on inspiration and information sources. Pollier criticized the current O'Neill government service delivery mechanism. He says the opposition is more critical in balancing people's lives through sustainable growth.
We see the government talking about small, medium-scale enterprises, but not many are there. So we have looked at those and have seen that factor is an important fundamental matter we've also considered in our policy.
The opposition leader said the country's forefathers believed that God and the Constitution can redefine and successfully change the country based on two pillars.
Holy Bible, it's where we get our principles from. Papua New Guineans are ashamed to talk about the Holy Bible.
The opposition is embarking to develop skills industry growth in a more responsible manner with the available resources.
And this is a thing that puts the government to the perspective that they will have a very vibrant and a dynamic opposition that will be very serious in addressing the affairs of the people, especially in terms of addressing policies of government.
The opposition's policies were designed as the backdrop of the global recession impact, falling oil prices, and the desire for better economic benefit to PNG's rural population. Fabian Hakalitz, National MTV News.
Meanwhile, the opposition has also announced its shadow cabinet. Opposition leader Don Pollier says the new-look shadow cabinet will keep the government accountable.
Talk about a value and a principle that even
Opposition leader Don Pollier has announced the terminations of shadow ministerial responsibilities. Lay MP and Deputy Opposition Leader Sam Basil is the Opposition Whip and Shadow Minister for State Enterprises, Agriculture and Livestock, Lands and Physical Planning. Vanimo Green MP Belden Nama, Housing and Urban Development, Defence, Police with Information and Communication. Rabaul MP Dr. Alan Marad, Justice and Attorney General, Labour and Industrial Relations, Public Service, Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology. Kikori MP Mark Maipakai, Finance, National Planning, Fisheries and Marine Resources, Bougainville Affairs, with Health and HIV and AIDS. Rai Coast MP James Gao, Works and Implementation, Transport and Civil Aviation, Commerce and Industry, Tourism, Arts and Culture, with Sports and Pacific Games, while Lagaim Pogara MP Nixon Mangape, Petroleum and Energy, Mining, Intergovernment Relations, Environment and Conservation with Climate Change. Pollier is confident his shadow ministers will influence the ruling government with a strategy that is people-centered. Fabian Hakalitz, National MTV News.
Health Minister Michael Malabag has been blasted for the government's response in dealing with a multi-drug resistant crisis in Daru, Western Province. Opposition leader Don Pollier says the national government has failed the people by remaining silent on this issue.
Opposition leader Don Pollier labelled Mr. Malabag's response to the TB crisis hitting Daru and Western Province as unpleasing and embarrassing.
We need help, and I say help, we need it very badly. We seem to be all part of the problem. That is what is happening.
Mr. Pollier said the multi-drug resistant TB in Daru is a sad state of affair. Response shown by the national government in containing the epidemic is a grave concern.
because I saw the government has no heart. The government's passion is not there. The government has no belief in dealing with this issue of combating this multi-drug resistant TB.
Health is a priority of any government, says Pole. Instead of using funds to address the Daru TB epidemic, millions have been pumped into non-essential infrastructure like roads and bridges in Port Moresby.
So much millions of kina restructuring, reconstructing roads in the nation's capital that do not need reconstruction.
Police said the national government must not rely heavily on the Australian government for funds, but has to play its part in the fight against the multi-drug resistant crisis.
If it has, I call on them to immediately suspend other unnecessary activities and collect the resources into combating the multi-resistant TB while they can now. Because if we cannot do, it's going to be a major menace to the population of PNG.
However, Prime Minister Peter O'Neill, when questioned of the national government's seriousness into the TB crisis, said it's now the focus and priority.
So please let us work together. These are very expensive treatments. We are doing everything possible, but we have overcome the battle with HIV/AIDS, and I'm certain that we can do better and overcome this battle with TB. So let us work together.
Combating TB is a very expensive exercise, and the Prime Minister appealed to all infected to be faithful to the dose and treatment. Fabian Hakelitz, National EMTV News.
Vanimo Green MP Bilder Nama has taken a strong stance against the killings in West Papua, Indonesia. He says he is concerned about the situation in West Papua as his electorate shares the common border with Indonesia. He adds his electorate will continue to be at risk if the West Papua issue continues to be ignored by the PNG government.
Vanimo Green MP in a press conference yesterday said the national government must send a strong statement to the Indonesian government to condemn killings of innocent West Papuans in Indonesia.
Massacre that's going on and all the indiscriminate killing of our Melanesian brothers and sisters over there, the government of PNG needs to make a very strong statement.
Mr. Nama said with Vanimo sharing its borders with Indonesia, lives of many innocent Papua New Guineans are at risk traveling to and from the Wutung border post. 2 weeks ago, Prime Minister Peter O'Neill shed light on the issue, saying Papua New Guinea must be a leader in the Pacific on issues such as the West Papuans' fight for freedom. Moreover, Mr. Nama said a diplomatic approach must be carried out between the two governments to stop the continuous killings of West Papuans.
Papua New Guinea need to rise up and make a strong statement about the way Indonesians are treating the West Papuans and about the activities on the border between West Sepik and Western Province.
In the meantime, the MP has called on the national government to tighten up the Border Development Authority. He said the government must concentrate to build infrastructures along the border to beef up security for Papua New Guineans and their land. Stanley Ove Jr., National EMTV News.
Interoil Corporation has been warned that the main gates to its Herisu camp in Gulf Province will be forcefully shut following a minor fuel leakage recently. When speaking to MTV, Herisu villagers say they are prepared to block off the gates to Interoil's facility if the company's management does not provide a favorable response.
The villagers threatened to lock the gate tomorrow at the Interoil's fuel storage camp at Arisu if the management fails to meet with them. This comes after substantial liters of Jet A1 fuel spilled off into the environment, polluting gardens and killing surrounding vegetation.
Now this last Jet A1 fuel spilled here. Now life and bagarap through na mi planokat kay.
Since the spill last Thursday, the company has done little to address this environmental issue. The spill has now become a health hazard, polluting food gardens and people's respiratory system.
Very bloomy. That fifth night, I'm still get up and me smelling something, mouse lamb and loose lamb, and some, smell is still stuff yet. And I'm vomit good morning.
But Interoil, in a media statement, stated an environmental team are on site carrying out investigations. By tomorrow, locals will lock the main gate into the site if Interoil fails to meet with them.
By Sunday afternoon, we want Interoil to come and talk to us. And they consider shutting the gate again next.
Quinten Alomp, National EMTV News.
You're watching National EMTV News. We'll have more stories after these messages. Welcome back to the news. A report on teachers' leave fares and entitlements will be tabled in Parliament by Education Minister Nick Kuman. The report will provide recommendations as to how teachers' leave fares and entitlements can be properly managed. Fabian Hakalitz with this report.
The 2015 resume of Parliament this week saw many questions raised on issues affecting the education sector. One of them is the ongoing teachers' leave fares and entitlement saga. Yesterday, Wasiragawi MP Joseph Yopiopi told the House if the government was serious enough on quality education, it must properly address and manage teachers' incentives like leave fares and entitlements.
If we look after teachers, if we give them good incentive, if we have those things like simple things like leave fares for them to travel back and forth into the villages, I think those are the things that will, give them the boost to stand up and give quality education to our children.
But National Education Minister Nick Kuman also grieved with teachers and confirmed receiving the report and will make a ministerial statement in Parliament next week.
Either we can go to an ALOSCO system, payroll system, and we accommodate those live in one of the fields, and they can be paid directly to the teachers through the bank instead of going through that process.
Minister Kuman explained the decentralization of education responsibilities to provinces has enabled provincial governments to be accountable for teachers' welfare because Waigani only deals with salaries and wages.
It's to do with mismanagement in the provinces, with the provincial education advisor and his management team in the provinces, which directly comes under the provincial government.
Warrants received by October 2014 was 26.1 million kina remitted to provincial treasuries except Western and Simbu provinces. To avoid this problem, teachers on leave must submit applications before May to all provincial education office to make appropriate appropriation.
Those who have applied for, they take the leave, and when you applied late, you still complain because you are entitled to it, but there's no extra money for that.
The national government has increased its budget of 26 million to 31 million kina to cater for teachers' leave fares and entitlements. Fabian Hakalitz, National EMTV News.
After more than 12 months, neglected piles of household rubbish between the Port Moresby General Hospital and the University of Papua New Guinea's medical facility have finally been collected. This follows a call by Health Minister Michael Malabag to have the area cleared.
After a year and a half of negligence, the pile of rubbish was finally cleared on Thursday. As you can see, 2 containers were needed to hold the rubbish and debris from what used to be heaps of abandoned garbage. Garbage that was uncollected for more than 12 months. This drainage system used to be clogged with debris and dirt. Now it is cleared to allow the smooth flow of storm drainage water. But the overall sewage system is yet to receive a facelift.
Look, our people don't want to go into getting sicknesses, these sort of things out of that. So it's important that the Port Moresby General Hospital that takes charge of that issue.
The hospital support staff that live in that community has also been dealing with condemned housing as well as an unhygienic lavatory system. This week, Health Minister Michael Malabag said illegal settlers also reside in the area, and once they have vacated the land, proper housing will be constructed for the hospital staff.
Once it is out of the way, then we're going to have more better housing for the workers at the Port Moresby General Hospital.
Tokana Hasavi Jr., National EMTV News.
The autonomous region of Bougainville is home to many war remains and for many years has been an attractive site for tourists from Japan. It's also the region where Japanese Marshal Admiral Hirosoku Yamamoto's plane crashed. Recently, the Japanese group called Nihon Izokukai prayed for their loved ones who died during World War II. Every year, they flock into Bougainville to visit these sites and pray over the dead. Education of children is not only the responsibility of parents, but the community as a whole. This was the message from a PNG delegation who recently visited Haifa in Israel. The main aim is to enhance education values in PNG and to help educate children, youth and adults in a holistic approach.
Education is more than reading, writing and mathematics. It is one of the most important investments a country can make in its people and its future, and is critical to reducing poverty and inequality. A lot of parents, guardians and young people may be concerned about yet another change in the education curriculum and the work this will cause. On the 29th of January this year, 2015, 7-member delegation in Papua New Guinea left for Haifa in Israel to join people who came from around the world to consult on preparing young people to be responsible for both their own spiritual growth and their participation in the advancement of civilization.
The International Teaching Center, which is the body that's looking after all these community building activities throughout the world, called us to Haifa to consult about how the activities are going on. These activities consist of devotional meetings where friends get together to say prayers in their communities, children's classes where we run a program for children where they learn about prayers and they learn about God. And then we have special programs for junior youth, and we help build their capacity to understand what's happening in the world.
With values education, young people are assisted by appropriately qualified adults in schools, homes, and religious and other youth organizations to make explicit those values underlying their own attitudes. Julie Badui Owa, National EMTV News.
Attorney General Alo Pala has been issued directions to formulate appropriate legislation to manage compensation. The directions issued by Prime Minister Peter O'Neill seek to ensure citizens are protected. Fabian Hakalit says more.
Yesterday, Anglim South Wagi MP Joe Coim questioned the Prime Minister if the national government had plans to regulate the compensation issue, as drastic measures need to be taken immediately in order to prevent this practice spreading.
Property, or whether it be all forms of compensation, I think it's getting out of hand. So as a government, can we regulate this industry here?
Prime Minister Peter O'Neill said people have been seeking compensation for every act that makes individuals who strive for better living bankrupt. The Prime Minister told Parliament that a legislative approach will be created to manage such claims that are necessary.
Honourable allows that we will start working and giving directions to the Attorney General's office to formulate a legislative structure for us to put forward to this Honourable House in the coming months. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
According to 10 interviews conducted today, compensation is the fastest way of getting pre-money. However, the national government needs to put a complete stop before it becomes an accepted money-making avenue. Fabian Hakalitz, National EMTV News.
You're watching National EMTV News. I'll bring you all the sporting action in Trukai Sports after the break.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. Young AFL player Brandon Beno, contracted to play with the Coolangatta Club of Gold Coast in Australia, has encouraged youth to be committed in sports and refrain from alcohol and drugs. Young Brandon, aged 20, from Selau in the autonomous region of Bougainville, is currently under contract with the Coolangatta Club. Beno revealed learning many things to becoming a professional and has encouraged other young youth in PNG to remain committed and disciplined in everything they do. The PNG Pukpuks have successfully completed their national trials in Port Moresby. Pukpuks coach Sydney Wesley says selected players will play against Singapore in their first international test of the year. Lorraine Genia was at Murray Barracks and witnessed the trials.
The trials here in Port Moresby at Murray Barracks consist of the 40-man squad which have been in camp over the past week at IPA. Now, Coach Sydney Wesley confirmed that after these trials, a 28-man team will be selected for the international test match in Singapore.
This is the finale of the one-week training camp that we did. So from this one, we are due to select a 28-man squad to take down to Singapore.
This year, the Singapore test match will put to test the team's strength. Sydney said the team in training at the moment are a group of both senior and up-and-coming talent. This 40-man squad proved that 15's rugby now has a wider player base, something they have lacked in previous years.
A lot of the boys who are relatively new, but who've been around, they've been knocking on the door for quite some time, and I think getting them into the camp or getting selected into the camp, they've really they've raised their hand up. I mean, they want the jersey, the Pukpuk jersey.
The squad consists of PNG RFU affiliates like Daru, Lei, Kokopo and Goroka, and one Brisbane-based player, Richard Aitzi. Lorraine Genia, National EMTV Sports.
To soccer now, and a double header as Oro striker Gary Moka returned to action with a decisive header in the second half as Oro defeated Port Moresby FC 3-1 in round 4 of the Telecom National Soccer League. In the earlier match, Hekari coach Jerry Allen was left disappointed as the champions only managed a draw against a gallant Admiralty. Elijah Lovett with this report.
Admiralty went into the match as heavy underdogs considering they've only taken 1 point in the previous 3 rounds. They attacked early though and pressurized the Hekari defense. However, Hekari did have more shots on goal as the game wore on. Emmanuel Simon dangerous in the midfield with captain David Muta shooting from outside as well. Michael Foster also proving dangerous for Admiralty. The final score, 0-0 on both sides. Today's other match, Oro FC were quietly confident after the 1-0 victory last weekend and Henry Ronnie opened the scoring early. FC Pom were getting into rhythm until Andrew Marampau was red-carded, changing the complex of the game, before Neil Hans equalized midway through the second half.
Nibla kamu sa underdogs, wata criticism kalau public, hasam nibla nibla team inside the competition ma. Nibla just ambuli nibla na down nibla, go through like training na, that's up. Next game, look forward to the next game nibla.
In the end, it was Gary Moka's second half header which sealed the victory for Oro FC. Elijah Lovett, National EMTV Sports.
That's where we end Trukai Sports. Up next, the weather details. Stay with us.
Trukai Sports. Trukai Sports.
Taking a quick look at the weather for the next 24 hours. In the southern region, Port Moresby, cloudy periods with a chance of squally showers and rain. Cloudy rain periods for Alatau and Kerma. And rain for Popondetta and Daru. And that's how it is today, Saturday, the 14th of February 2015. On behalf of the EMTV News team, I'm Meribatulo. Bye for now.